Hello, how are you? So in this video I'm going to be sharing some lessons we can learn from the birth chart of Taylor Swift. So even if you don't have some of the combinations she has in her chart, we can at least learn how to read our chart better. So let's start with the birth details. There was some confusion regarding her time of birth. I always check the time of birth of a famous person in Astro Data Bank, and I found two different times. And I tested them and I found this time, 8:36 a.m. to be the one making more sense, and they've referenced a book on page 8 of that book. The time was mentioned as 8:36 a.m. So I'm fairly confident that this is her time of birth. So let's start from the beginning. Her rising constellation is Purva Ashadha. Not only that, even Mercury and Saturn in her chart are in the same constellation. So her personality is governed by this nakshatra. Purva Ashadha, as per mythology, is ruled by goddess Apa, and I have shared the mythology in a separate video. I'm summarizing here. I think a Purva Ashadha native is excellent at making things better, purifying things. The purification process, the filtering process, the distillation process, the editing process is directly linked to this constellation. So immediately when I see Mercury in this constellation, I find the person being an excellent editor. She has written a lot of her music. And the reason why I'm linking this to her career is because Mercury in her chart is also ruling her career house. This could have also led to other possible careers, like I've also seen data analysts having this position, or the ones who are in the business of production of alcohol, or to the ones who are providing cleaning services. All these businesses or professions essentially are to do with purifying things, making things better, making things clearer, like a data analyst would. And it is this quality of purification is why a winnowing basket was considered to be one of the main symbols of this constellation. In order to understand what role Purva Ashadha is playing in our chart, we have to study its planetary ruler. So whenever you're analyzing any planet's position, don't limit your analysis to the planet house nakshatra combination. You must go now study the position of the ruler of the constellation ruler, which is Venus in her case. And Venus is sitting where? It's in the second house. If you have to identify if there's some singing ability, you have to look at the second house. That is directly linked to our voice and naturally singing ability. When Venus is there, it is immediately a sign that the person can have a very pleasing voice. And Venus in her chart is in Uttara Ashadha. Now that constellation is not directly linked to singing. However, this constellation is a lot about achieving success against all odds. No matter how big your target is, this constellation can lead to you achieving it. And not only that, Venus in her chart is ruling the money house and the 6th house. The 6th house will determine the nature of your work, and the 11th house is going to determine how you're going to make money. So if we start from the beginning, the career house in her chart is ruled by Mercury, which is in the constellation ruled by Venus. The money house and the 6th house is also ruled by Venus. Everything comes back to Venus's position in the second in Uttara Ashadha. This is why I was convinced her chart based on 8:36 a.m. made more sense. So if you are trying to assess your career direction, I have mentioned it in other videos too, you please analyze the rulers of the 6th, 10th and 11th house. I'm very sure you'll be able to logically understand why have you chosen a certain career path. So not only is Mercury there in Purva Ashadha, I also find Saturn in the same constellation. And if you study a bit further, Saturn continues to occupy signs ruled by Mercury in the Navamsha and the Dasamsha chart. So this is where you carry forward your understanding from the main chart to the other charts. This is a pattern. Saturn and Mercury in her chart continue to have a relationship in all three charts. Now, due to this Saturn's influence on Mercury, the person becomes very resilient. The ability the native has to finish what one has started is one of the native's greatest strengths. So if you are writing a book, for example, and you're trying to put your ideas, that's Mercury in Purva Ashadha. You're refining your ideas, putting them on paper. When Saturn is there, you also go back to what you've written and you try to make it even better until you're satisfied. And that final version, purified, edited version is then published. This editorial skills that I now see in her chart due to the Saturn's position is also one of her strengths. Now if we study Venus's position in the Navamsha and the Dasamsha, Venus is ruling the money in the 6th house. It's in the 8th house in both charts. Again, you take into account the findings from the main and you link that to the findings in the Navamsha and the Samsha. So this 8th house association, in my view, is behind her theme of music centered around heartbreaks or a personal loss of some kind, as 8th house is to do with that. Ketu in her chart is also in the 8th house in the constellation of Ashadha, which again is directly linking her personality and theme of her work centered around heartbreak and personal loss, and connecting with her audience at a psychological plane. I've time and again mentioned the constellation of Ashadha is directly linked to the field of psychology, particularly when Ketu is there. So why does she have now these millions of followers? I think it's a lot to do with Jupiter's influence in her chart in the 7th house in all 3 charts. Jupiter in the main chart is ruling the 1st house linked to her personality. So when the 1st house ruler is in the 7th house or having a relationship with the 7th house, it's a sign of popularity, and it's a sign of massive popularity when the planet is Jupiter. And furthermore, I've always maintained Dhanishta is the one constellation directly linked to worldwide fame. And she has Rahu in this constellation. And now, if you go back in her life when she was very young, from the Dasha tables, and now I'm linking her chart to the Dasha table, while she was going through Rahu's Mahadasha, she would go up to record studios to get a contract. Even at the age of 11, she wanted a record contract while she was under this Rahu's Mahadasha. With Rahu in Dhanishta, the individual can attract fame, but also a strong desire to build a self-identity. Now here's something interesting. Rahu represents our maternal grandmother, and Rahu is in Dhanishta. Her grandmother was an opera singer. Not only is Dhanishta directly linked to fame, it's also linked to the rhythm of the universe, and therefore it's directly linked to the field of music. I have explained that in more detail in the video I've posted on Dhanishta. Now, if you are to assess the relationship an individual might have with one's parents, we have to look at the ruler of the 4th and the 10th house to know the relationship between the mother and the father respectively. Now, the 4th and the 1st house ruler is Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the 7th house. So in many ways, I see this combination as her mother being her guiding force. I was doing my research on her life, and she has described her mother to be her guiding force in life. The relationship with the father also seems to be warm. However, the relationship with the mother seems more stronger, given the 4th house ruler is in the 7th in a strong position and is also governing her personality house. In many ways, you could say that the guidance of her mother has shaped her personality, and that is also having an impact on how popular she is in the society, as this combination now falls in the 7th house. Let's have a look at the dashas though, because this is where Vedic astrology becomes very fascinating. If you can predict what might happen in the future, you can plan for it much better. Right at the beginning of Jupiter's Mahadasha is when her her singing career started. And that's the time when she was given a contract by Sony Television, if I remember correctly. So she started her career right at the beginning of Jupiter's Mahadasha. And now, I had mentioned repeatedly, Mercury Purva Ashadha like individual could be a storyteller, a creative one. Alternatively, the individual can also be involved in music composition, as it is the case in her chart. Now, while she was going through Mercury's Antardasha, this is the time when she wrote the lyrics for all the songs in her album. So do you see now, under Mercury's time phase, what could have happened in her life is that her time was spent on making things better, improving her music by writing lyrics, and Saturn's influence would have kept her going. So it was a fairly long time, and she wrote all songs by herself. In other songs that she's written them with other artists. In this Dasha, during this Dasha, she was doing things independently. So right throughout Jupiter's Mahadasha, there was rise and rise in her career. She won different awards. Jupiter in the 7th sign of massive fame. Now, as soon as she entered the Saturn's Mahadasha, now I have described Saturn's chapter to be a difficult time phase for everyone. In her case, given Saturn's aspect on the career house, Saturn from the 1st house is having an aspect on the 10th house, it could have impacted her career, and it did. So just before the beginning of the Saturn's Mahadasha in July 2019, she had an issue with her label owner who had sold her music to another party. And this created a lot of trauma for her. and she went public with how her artistic work was being sold to someone without her permission. And eventually in the year 2021, so without having found any legal solution during the Saturn's Mahadasha, and it's very common for a person to feel stuck with a problem that's happened in her life, and then she had to redo all of her music in the year 2021 whilst she was under Saturn's Mahadasha. So the lesson here is, if you are under Saturn's time phase, you might also find yourself stuck with a problem. And if Saturn is having an aspect on the career house, the 10th house, you could have issues in your career. So the best thing to do at that stage is to simply be patient. There's nothing you can do about it. Certain karmic lessons you have to learn. Now about her personal life, I want to start off with the last 2 relationships she's had. The house linked to love affairs is the 5th house, and the 5th house in her chart is ruled by Mars, and Mars in her chart is in the 12th house. So during Mars's Antardasha, under Jupiter's Mahadasha, she was in a relationship. The person's name is Joe Alwyn. But if we study her chart in a bit more detail now, the house linked to marriage, she has Ketu in the house of marriage in the Navamsha, and that is going to be one of the main reasons behind late marriage in her case. And incidentally, she's about to enter Ketu's chapter very soon, and that is from June 25. And during that time of 4C, she's going to have some issues with her current partner as well. So if you know certain time phases are not very promising, perhaps you can plan your life better. That's the life lesson there. Perhaps you can wait till the end of Ketu's time phase to consider taking your relationship to the next stage. Now, Mercury, who is ruling the marriage house in the main chart, and in the Navamsha I find Mercury and Rahu together. So this Rahu's influence on the ruler of the marriage house is the same as having Rahu in the house of marriage. Is one of the reasons why a person can be very undecided in one's personal life. So during Mercury's Antardasha, which she started, her personal life would have been very active. By that I mean she could have been undecided about who her partner should be. And that is when I think she broke off from her ex-partner and started a new relationship. During Mercury's Antardasha, she was meant to experience companionship, but due to Rahu's aspect on Mercury, they are together in the Navamsha, her undecidedness could have led to her parting ways with her ex-partner and starting a new relationship. But then again, under Ketu, she's likely to face some issues. Right, so this is how I think you can learn a few things about your chart if you try to connect the findings from the main, Navamsha and the Samsha, and link it to the Dashas. You can plan your life better. My intention of creating this video is to simply present you a tutorial on how to read your chart better, and that hopefully I've done so in this video. So until next time, I hope this video was useful. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.